Karl Marx didn't get it wrong. He got it early, 200 years early. And the reason the world didn't immediately embrace his vision wasn't because capitalism worked. It was because in his time, socialism wasn't technologically possible yet. True socialism, the system that replaces capitalism, eliminates exploitation, and provides for all, requires abundance. And in the 1800s, and even through the 20th century, we didn't have the tools to create abundance without exploitation. But today, we do. And that changes everything. Every attempt at socialism in the 20th century was forced to compete with capitalism on capitalism's terms. The Soviet Union, China, Cuba, they had the right ideas, but they were building socialism under the conditions of extreme scarcity. The Soviet Union had to industrialize in a single generation just to survive against imperialist powers. They didn't have automation. They didn't have AI. They didn't have decentralized sustainable energy production. Everything required massive amounts of human labor, centralized planning, and rationing just to function, because the alternative was collapse. And yet, despite those conditions, socialist states still managed to achieve things capitalism never could. The USSR went from a feudal empire to a spacefaring superpower in just 40 years. Cuba, despite an economic blockade, built a world-class healthcare system. China lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty faster than any nation in history. But imagine if they had today's technology in 1919. Imagine if they didn't have to fight against scarcity. If socialism wasn't about redistributing limited resources, but creating infinite ones. Let's rewrite history. Let's imagine that in 1919, the Soviet Union had automation, AI-driven planning, nuclear fusion, and asteroid mining. What would the world look like? First thing that changes, no forced collectivization. Instead of struggling to produce enough food, automated vertical farming makes food production effortless. Instead of needing millions of workers in factories, AI-driven automation manufactures everything at a fraction of the labor cost. Instead of rationing resources, 3D printing and advanced materials science make everything cheaper, faster, more available. Instead of competing with capitalism, socialism instantly outproduces it. The Cold War doesn't happen because there's no contest. The socialist world is already living in abundance, while the capitalist world still struggles with boom and bust cycles, recessions, and inequality. By the 1950s, instead of an arms race, there's a post-scarcity race. Who can build the best cities? Who can create the most beautiful art? Who can push humanity further into space? There is no Berlin Wall because there's no need to keep people from leaving. Capitalist nations are collapsing as their own citizens demand the abundance they see in the socialist world. By 1970, the global economy isn't even recognizable. There's no global south exploited for labor because automation handles all necessary production. There's no oil wars because fusion energy is abundant and free. Climate change never happens because sustainability is built into the system from the start. The internet, developed not as a tool for corporations to profit, but as a decentralized network for global knowledge sharing. By the year 2000, humanity is already a spacefaring civilization, not because of billionaire vanity projects, but because a world without capitalism has no artificial limits on progress. Of course, that didn't happen. Instead, we got a century of capitalist destruction. Wars fought to crush socialist experiments before they could fully develop. Technological progress hijacked by corporations for profit instead of human advancement. Climate collapse, inequality, and now the rise of techno-monarchists who want to hoard the future for themselves. But here's the thing. Capitalism is out of time. The same technology that would have made 20th century socialism unstoppable is now here. And now, for the first time in history, socialism is not just possible. It is inevitable. Because capitalism cannot function in a world of infinite resources. It cannot survive automation. It cannot survive decentralized, democratized production. It cannot survive a world where housing, food, healthcare, and knowledge are no longer scarce. And this is why the ruling class is panicking. This is why they are working harder than ever to create artificial scarcity, to keep you trapped in a system that no longer makes sense. They are hoarding technology, suppressing progress, trying to convince you that the future they are living is impossible for you. But it's not. The technology exists. The only question left is whether we demand it. So here's where we go today. We stand at the moment where, finally, Marx's vision is technologically possible. We can create a world where no one is forced to work just to survive, where no one is homeless, where no one is left behind because of artificial scarcity. The last 200 years were capitalism's strongest argument. We can't provide abundance because it doesn't exist. But now, that excuse is gone. The ruling class can no longer claim that there isn't enough food, enough housing, enough resources, because we can make them infinite. The only reason we don't is because the system is built to prevent it. So now the choice is ours. Do we accept a future where automation, AI, and infinite resources serve only the ultra-rich, where the masses are left behind, trapped in economic obsolescence? Or do we demand what has always been possible, but only now has become inevitable? A world where the people, not billionaires, control the wealth of the future. Marx was 200 years ahead of his time. But now, his time has come. The future is here. The only question left is, will we seize it?